The three-story Ketching Hotel was built by W.B. Ketching during 1891 and 92. The building burned on November the 1st of 1910 and was built back with 2 stories. It was the first and only full block of business property built in London by one person. Over the years, the building hosted several local businesses and was a community gathering location for the citizens of town. One of the biggest scandals in the history of London centered around the Ketching Hotel in 1898 through 1899. The story involved a dashing young attorney named Eugene Kerr Wilson, age 29, originally from Grant County, and Mary Cloyd, age 25, daughter of Thomas Cloyd of McWhorter, a young lady who worked as a cook and boarded at the Ketching Hotel. The end result of the relationship was a death, a murder charge, and a sensational trial. Early in 1898, E.K. Wilson began paying his respects to Miss Cloyd in the capacity of a sweetheart and continued to do so about once a week, and sometimes more often, calling on her in the parlor of the hotel. Mr. Wilson used every means known to the wiles of man to accomplish his purpose, to have carnal knowledge of her. Miss Cloyd became pregnant around early winter of 1898. This was not good news for E.K. Wilson or for Mary Cloyd. Out of pure panic and desperation, E.K. Wilson reached out to Dr. J.D. Foster for advice. Dr. Foster would later testify in court that in late November to December of 1898, Wilson came to him and told him he believed he had Miss Cloyd pregnant. And Wilson wanted to know if cotton root pills and ergot would produce an abortion. We're here at the Foster Cemetery in East London. This entire area is known as Foster Heights. And today on Memorial Day, we'll pay tribute to Dr. J.D. Foster, whose testimony later on would be pivotal in the case of E.K. Wilson. Wilson asked Dr. Foster if a catheter inserted in the uterus would produce an abortion. He also asked Dr. Foster if he would write a prescription to provide the catheter and pills, and then asked Dr. Foster to provide him with the catheter and even to go with him to use it. And Dr. Foster told Wilson, "Do you take me to be a damn fool?" And he warned Wilson that the use of a catheter could kill the girl. Now, E.K. Wilson was well aware that there was no law prohibiting the sale of catheters at a drugstore, and he proceeded with his plan. Soon afterward, Wilson met Dr. Foster again and told him he had used the instrument and he believed that it had done the work. So the testimony of Dr. J.D. Foster would be pivotal in the case against E.K. Wilson later on. By the end of December 1898, Miss Cloyd was deathly ill. She was under the care of Doctors Ramsey and Pennington, and authorities were interviewing Wilson, while doctors and caretakers of the Ketching Hotel were gathering facts from Mary. She admitted to giving in to Wilson's persuasive genius, and under the promise of marriage, she gave in to his lusty desires. Wilson admittedly had given her medicines, and that with his own hands he used the instrument to cause the abortion. Wilson stated that before he would be forced to marry a girl in her condition, he would kill himself. After his interview in early January 1899, Wilson left the room, left town, and left the county. He would return under a murder charge in 3 short weeks. The dying declaration of Mary Cloyd was made in the presence of Doctors Ramsey and Pennington and hotel staff. There was no mention of her family being involved in the case at any time. Mary told the witnesses that no other man had ever known her carnally, that E.K. Wilson had accomplished her ruin with the solemn promise of marriage, and she admitted that Wilson was the father of the child. She told them that Wilson had given her 12 pills with directions on how to use them. She took half of the pills But on December the 27th, E.K. Wilson wanted to use the catheter instrument just to eliminate any possible risk of pregnancy. So Wilson inserted the catheter by the use of a wire, and he cut it off, leaving a portion of the wire in the uterus. And by this, he produced the abortion. But he also caused her illness and destroyed her life. Doctors Pennington and Ramsey had attended Mary throughout her sickness and did everything known to medical science in those days to save her life. But she died on January the 15th, 1899. E.K. Wilson was arrested 1 week later on January 22nd, 1899, but the trial ended with a hung jury in June of 1899. After a change of venue to Rockcastle County, the trial was moved to May of 1900. In June of 1900, Wilson was found guilty and sentenced to 5 years. He served 3. It was a dramatic trial with witnesses charged for giving false statements. Wilson himself was charged with tampering with the jury wheel and bribing of jurors. At the end of the video, I'll give you a website where you can go read the news articles about the trial. Eugene Kerr Wilson later served additional time for bootlegging. He lived to the age of 60, and he died August 4th, 1929 in Missouri. He is buried in Williamstown in Grant County, Kentucky. London, Kentucky in 1900 was quite different than it appears today, and so were beliefs and traditions among families. In all of the historic articles about this case, nothing ever mentions her family appearing in court or in public during any of the legal proceedings. Back in those days, Mary's death and the circumstances leading to her death would have brought great shame and embarrassment to her family. A number of historic documents state that Mary Cloyd is buried in the Chestnut Cemetery, which is located off of Highway 30 on Feltner Steer Road. When you check the inventory of that cemetery, we do see that indeed her mother Lucy and her father Thomas are buried there next to an unmarked grave. This is the Chestnut Cemetery off Feltner Steer Road in East Bernstadt. In 1900, when all the events of this tragedy were playing out, Thomas Cloyd, the father of Mary, would have been 49 years old, and Lucy, the mother of Mary Cloyd, would have been 43. They had 6 other children living at home at that time. Thomas died in 1935 at the age of 86 years old, and he died in Louisville. Lucy died in 1922 around the age of 65. Now, the fact that Thomas's obituary has him dying in Louisville, it is likely that the family left Laurel County due to the embarrassment and the guilt and the shame that had been brought to the family. In Thomas's obituary in 1935, there was no mention of his daughter Mary preceding him in death. Historic documentation states that Mary is buried here in the Chestnut Cemetery. Right here at the foot of Lucy Cloyd is an unmarked grave. Over here to the left of Lucy is another unmarked grave. It is very likely that one of these is the final resting place of Mary Cloyd. And they did not mark her grave, because that was not uncommon to do. She brought shame and embarrassment and humility to the family, so they buried her and placed her in an unmarked grave. Very likely she is to the left of her mother and probably buried right here. January the 15th, 1899. the day that Mary Cloyd succumbed to her injuries sustained and caused by E.K. Wilson 122 years ago, and a sad story in Laurel County history. Thanks for watching.